Those of you that read project management, how do you plan under this kind of circumstance? How do you budget? How do you forecast? When you cannot plan, when you cannot budget, when you cannot forecast, it means that your monetary system has failed. So the CBN is so active. I'm trying to interpret their policies. Sometimes it's even strange. It's strange what they come up with. They don't know that the source of the challenge is Ben-Hadad. It's Ben-Hadad. But this set of scriptures in this story gives us an insight into how to confront famine in a territory. If you are still with me, say amen. A woman cried out to the king. I heard that in times of famine, it's women that suffer more. I don't know how much truth. Because that truth is not from the Bible. It's just from, for instance, in times of war, the impact that it has upon women because of their tendency to want to provide for the family, to see that the children are eating, they can go without food and all of that. So it was a woman that cried out to the king. The king was strolling on the fence, the wall of the city. I don't know what moved the hungry king to the fence, but that was where he was. And the woman was in the city and saw him elevated on the fence and cried out, "O king, help us. O king, deliver us. This matter." And then the king now revealed. The king used to be a very unsincere man before, but that day he was sincere. He said, "If God does not help you, from whence can I bring this help?" Now, a lot of you are looking to our king and say, so the first point, the first thing, the first matter, the first key, if you want to call it that we must use in a time of famine is to come to the understanding of the fact that if God does not help us, we cannot get help. So wisdom requires, therefore, that we turn our face to God. You must have heard what one of our senior ministers said in recent times in trying to analyze our condition from a more holistic perspective. He said that the problem of Nigeria is spiritual. As much as I know most of you don't like that kind of remark because you are professionals, you are economists, you are mathematicians, you are statisticians, you know how to stimulate the economy and the kind of things that we need to do as a nation in order for us to come and float again. I know you are professionals, but the person that spoke is not an illiterate person. The pastor that spoke, that gave perspective about the state of our economy, is not altogether an illiterate. It's a doctorate degree holder, so he knows what the numbers mean. However, he said that our problem is not tied to strategy and methods. Our problem is spiritual, and that's the description of what was obtainable in this scripture. So I want to advise, if you can, I know in the marketplaces, and those of you that do business and trade in the market, every day you talk about the president and he's not doing anything. He himself is helpless. Let me show you what the king said unto him. And the king of Israel was passing by upon the wall. There cried a woman unto him, saying, "Help my lord, O king." And he said, "If the Lord do not help thee, whence shall I help thee? Out of the barn floor or out of the winepress? Is there a storehouse that is available that I'm going to take resources from to attend to you? Is the help going to come from the winepress?" So this response that the king gave to the woman was an indication of the fact that he himself was helpless. There were only two sources from whence he would have provided help under normal circumstances: from the barn floor. That is to say, in a situation where they had a grain stylus, where they save grain for a rainy day. then salvation would have come from the barn floor. But unfortunately, the resources in the barn floor at this time had already been exhausted. And there were no fresh grapes again to take to the wine press. So there was nothing coming from the wine press, and there was nothing stored up in the barn floor. He was saying, if God does not help us, there is no help in sight. I'm not an economist, I'm a scientist. And because of my experience in the petroleum industry, I have eyes to understand the news, the updates that are coming from that industry. Most often, it is the shape of the oil industry that determines the strength of our economy. And we have had a subsidy removal policy that skyrocketed all the prices to the current situation today. And the truth of the matter is that, as you have all seen, the economy of Nigeria in the state that it was before the subsidy was removed did not have the capacity to maintain or to take the shock. And normally when a very drastic policy like that goes into force, palliatives are made available to cushion the effect of that drastic policy. Palliatives in form of increase in salaries, so that we can have a new average, a new reference point. Palliative in terms of, the oil now, that because we're subsidizing consumption, which is it's a wrong economic strategy. So it is justified to remove the subsidy. But you can now subsidize the production, so that what it will cost to produce 1 liter of petrol will be less. And because of that, it will impact upon the prices. And that will be an internal arrangement that will create a buffer for the people. So there are two sources. It's either we have subsidies. Are you there? Subsidies basically on production, so that the production cost will go down. For instance, if we subsidize, crude is the major component that determines 70% of what becomes the pump price. Unfortunately for us, crude is bought in hard currency, in dollars. It's priced and bought in dollars. So even if the price of crude should drop, because our naira has been devalued, it will still translate to a high pump price. Do you understand the metrics? So in such a situation, what the king said is what is obtainable. If God does not help you, from whence can I get the help? There's another argument, and the other argument is now that you have removed the subsidy, it means that there's more money available in the economy to attend to important matters. And I hope you know Nigeria. The more money doesn't reflect on the dashboard. So if God does not help us, I did some calculations, but it's not for this class. If I'm not online, I will show you the calculations that I did from December to January, just looking at the Nigerian situation in terms of economy. And I came to the conclusion of the king: if God, please help me preach to your neighbor, if God does not help us, there is no help in sight. Now, so I know many of you intellectuals believe that my submission is non-academic, and because of that, there's no deliverance in it. I will show you how to find deliverance. Because when we decide to turn to God, many things happen. Just like it became clear that only God could provide the answer. Meanwhile, the guys that are suffering from this economic situation are not. See, imagine you are in the city now. This woman that is crying and say, "Oh, King, help us." That woman that is crying has not seen Ben-Hadad. Ben-Hadad and his camp and his team are camped in a place that this widow, this woman, has not seen them. But they are the ones that are responsible for the death of her child that she delivered to be eaten yesterday, so that they could eat her neighbor's child tomorrow. Can you see the human strategy for surviving the situation that they came up with? Cannibalism. So it means that this hunger was so bad that it had changed the configuration of the heart of the people. The people could now consider their children as meat for the table. I think something much more than a bad economy was responsible. Because even as the situation is in Nigeria now, it has not occurred to anybody that meanwhile, the selfish arrangements among parents, among mothers for survival was heavily rigged with manipulation itself. Because after they had a sumptuous moment taking this woman's son, it was time for the other one, and then the finger of manipulation was found in the whole arrangement. The woman went to seek justice from the king. When the king heard the matter, I was expecting the king to judge. He became weak. He was so weak to even bring judgment. If God does not help us, from whence can I provide the help? The helplessness of the king became obvious. So right now we are turning to God. Sometimes God can allow a famine so that men can turn to him again. Right? Sometimes God can allow it so that the hearts of men can turn. Because normally a lot of us will want to make do with our intelligence, and then a situation comes where your intelligence counts for nothing. An opportunity comes, therefore, for us to turn to the Lord our God. Yes, I asked for the price of spaghetti. Is that the most common? No, Indomie. Let's start with Indomie. What was the price of Indomie before, and what is it now? I know there are people here that Indomie is a major item on their table, so they should be able to give us an update on that matter. Yes? Who? It was 50 naira. 350 for one. Oh, you are not helping me. You are not helping me. Oh, it seems the pastors don't eat Indomie. That's what I'm saying. Yes, Pastor Tony, what's happening? What was the cost of Indomie before, and what is the cost now?
The last time I went to get for my kids, I got a carton of Super Pack for 7,600.
No. You see, you are on another level. Okay. We are not talking about people that buy in cartons.
Okay.
In fact, you are not supposed to comment in this meeting. We are looking for people that buy one pack after pack. Those are the people that know the tension that is in the market. A pack, yeah, sister? Please equip her with a microphone.
Before Super Pack 1 was 200, as at today it's 400.
So we have, they are saying that the shop you bought your own.
It's old stock.
The help of the Lord had already visited that. The help that the king is talking about, that God can help. God had helped that shop. That's why it's wrong. Because it's 500 now.
A few days ago it was 450.
It was 450.
I was at the shop last night. Somebody told me that the carton was 15,200. But at the shop, they said they supplied to the shop for 18,000. So we don't know what the retail price.
As unacademic as this first point is, we are going to believe it. If God does not help us, and indeed I've looked at the figures. It's in the petroleum industry that my expertise gives me eyes to see. I've looked at the figures and I can tell you, if God does not help us, there is no help in sight. And it will interest you to know, we just came back from Cameroon and we used Askai Airlines for the trip. Askai Airlines is domiciled in Togo. So when you take a flight from Abuja, they'll take you to Togo first, and then from Togo you can go to any other destination of your choice. So we got to Togo, and Togo is not so far from here, as you know. And this meltdown, in fact, the currency of Togo, which is the what's it called again? CFA. It has increased in value. The CFA has climbed. For the first time in all these trips that we have made, the Naira is junior to the CFA. It was an embarrassment. So what I'm saying is that this famine does not affect Togo. Ben Haddad, the influence of Ben Haddad is not a regional thing. It's just Nigeria that has been besieged. Are you there? And then Cameroon is on the other side. Benin Republic is here, Togo is here, Cameroon is here. You know the map. So we went to Cameroon and everything was prospering. Everything, the economy was robust. The people were not even thinking about food because there was food everywhere. They were thinking about other things like witchcraft. One of the things that I'm going to compel us to do is to turn our face to the Lord and ask Him for an intervention. Because as I speak, it's obvious the king has no answer to this question. Is that clear? All right, so all kinds of things began to take place. Children are murdered by their parents, but it's no longer called murder, it's called eating. When there are dimensions of oppression that can come upon a people, things that are vices will now be given other names. It's now accommodated, it's now accepted. Even the justice system will be weak to provide judgment in such matters. Just like the king was weak to respond. The woman hid her son and she did not travel. She hid her son and she was present. Because when the other one was reporting to the king, was pointing her that this woman, she didn't run away. But the justice system became weak in addressing crimes, in addressing because of the intensity of the situation. And just like I said, just like the king said, if God does not help us, from whence can I get the help? The first sign of intervention that we saw, the story is a long one and I've not finished the reading because I just want to use the window that we read today to bring out the major point that I intend to discuss today. Subsequently, we'll do further reading and you will see further points. In the book of 2 Kings chapter 7, in the book of 2 Kings chapter 7, just like the king said that it's only God that can help under such circumstances. Indeed, God decided to be merciful and God spoke by the mouth of his prophet. You see, are you there? If you analyze the utterance that came from the mouth of God, God did not even speak about the cause of the economic meltdown. The prophetic word that came from God touched on nothing that was the cause of the situation. The prophetic word that came from God predicted and forecasted an impossible market situation. The emphasis of the voice of God was on the marketing table and a new price regime that will take over the space. Just to show you that God is God. He doesn't tell us about how to defeat the situation that resulted in the meltdown. He gives us another prediction. The prediction as touching the market situation in the next few days. He gives us a prediction on the price of cement, prediction on the price of Indomie, a prediction on the prices of spaghetti. So he gives us a prediction on the market. He doesn't tell us about how he will deal with the cost of the situation. Now, so in a time of famine, the most strategic thing that you will need is to secure the position of the voice of God. The reason why we are turning to God is so that we can receive. You see, God is so deep. God is so deep. In the book of Genesis, God decides to visit with Abraham and he introduces himself to Abraham as the El Shaddai. Are you there? The El Shaddai, the strong, the one that can overcome every situation, the one that can overcome every circumstance, the multi-breasted, the one that can sustain every generation. So it's the strong that can overcome, it's the multi-breasted that can sustain. This was the introduction of himself that he brought to Abraham. And we see what he overcame in the life of Abraham was barrenness. He overcame barrenness in the life of Abraham. And I don't want to go into that. He overcame famine in the life of Isaac. So we are going to go into the life of, and he overcame poverty. Poverty is personal. Famine is corporate. You there? Poverty is individualized. Famine is an affliction. It's a regional affliction. It's a national affliction. It's a territorial affliction. Famine is an indication of the fact that the territory is sick and needs a healer. Okay? And so we're going to look at the life of Isaac. Because you must have, okay, did I tell you the meaning of Ben-Hadad? The son of Hadad, and Hadad is the god of the storm and the rain. So in the days of Isaac, as he sojourned in the land of Canaan, there was famine. And this famine was occasioned by the fact that there was no rain in the Middle East. I don't know if I read a lot. To be able to pastor you, I have to read a lot on a daily basis so that I can pastor you. I believe that the last time I read about the weather of the Middle East, if I'm not mistaken, there are some countries in the Middle East that can only have 2 experiences of rainfall in an entire year. And there are periodic seasons where for a stretch of years, there will be no rain. So you see, these cycles of rainlessness comes generationally. So there was such a time in the days of Abraham when there was no rain in the Middle East, and what they normally do, the economic strategy for such circumstances is to move down to Africa, move down to Egypt, because Egypt was watered by the Nile. Even if there is a situation of rainlessness, some form of irrigation can take place because of the presence of the Nile. So the most reasonable thing, the most academic thing to do in a situation where a famine besieges the territory is to move to Egypt, because in Egypt there'll be supplies of all kinds. And that's why Egypt was a breadbasket in those days in seasons where famine hit so hard. So you will see Abraham, right? You will see Abraham going down to Egypt, even though that was not an instruction that God gave him. And because God was not behind his moving to Egypt under the circumstances of famine, he confronted some situations that he could not handle. One of such situations was that Pharaoh, I know you know, fell in love with his wife, and all those complications that began to take place. And it was in Egypt that Abraham was pressed to the wall, and Abraham denied his wife and said his wife is his sister. Imagine me saying, oh, Moga is my sister. Well, I don't want to go into all those details. I've looked into that matter. I've looked into it. Maybe when we are talking about marriage, we'll bring it up. The Lord will help us in Jesus' name. Now, the reason why he had to lie to defend himself was because God was not the one that led him there. Even though it was the correct thing to do academically, but he did not have a leading from God. He had to lie his way out of the territory. And there was a temptation for Isaac to follow the same pattern when the same famine replicated itself in his own generation. You see that there's a pattern of famine that was hitting the Middle East periodically, such that it features in every single generation. And every single generation will have a taste of the famine. Are you there? So are you with me? The guy was already making plans to move down to Egypt when he heard the voice of God. Don't go to Egypt. Remain in this land. And right in this land, I'm going to bless you. You must understand that when God deals with your economic situation, many strategies he will recommend may not be intellectually suitable for the situation. They will look counterproductive. And that's why you will need a heart of faith to be able to walk with God. You need a heart of faith to be able to deal with God. Are you there? All right, so God spoke to him. Let us trace a few scriptures here. Let's see what can we do Genesis chapter 26 verse 1? Genesis chapter 26 verse 1. And there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech the king of the Philistines unto Gerar. And the Lord appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee, sojourn in this land. You see, these encounters are different encounters. The encounter in verse 2 is different from the encounter in verse 3. Give me verse 2. And the Lord appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt. He was already preparing himself, because that's the intellectually correct thing to do. It was only Egypt that had what it takes to sustain plant production because of the Nile. And he's already captured in the history of his father that when such a situation came, he had to go to Egypt for sustenance. So he was not about to ask God about the matter, because there was already a pattern that was created. And unknown to him, that pattern was created in disobedience. That pattern was created without talking to God. Hallelujah. That's why we follow God. Even if you have a very good example of how a matter was tackled, God may not be willing to tackle that matter the same way he tackled it before in your own case. And that's why the king said, if God does not help us, from whence can I get help? It means the king himself became a preacher of that day, and he was pointing the congregation, pointing the nation to go back to their altar and to consult with God, because it is from the mind of God that the wisdom that we need for survival as a people and as individuals is going to come. So the first encounter he had, this was what God told him. And the Lord appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. So at this time, God had not told him the land. It means that God is inviting him for deeper consultations, deeper prayers. You might be in search of wisdom from God, and what comes to you from the heart of God does not spell out the whole pathway of wisdom. It means God is saying, stay put. There are other subsequent encounters that I want to bring to you. The other day, a brother came to me and he said that God has spoken to him to leave the ministry that he's serving because he has an assignment for him, and he went and resigned. So when he came to me, I said, okay, where did he say you should go? He said that information had not yet come. And you have resigned already. You resigned on half wisdom, because the profit that wisdom brings is in his ability to give direction. You have received the first part of the direction, which is that your time in this particular ministry has come to an end. But you have not received the second part of the wisdom, which now shows you what you will be doing when you leave this ministry. So he resigned with insufficient wisdom. It will surprise you to know that God can give you the first part of the wisdom, and then the second part of the wisdom will come 5 years later. Whenever you take off like a tornado, without the complete package, you are going to be a victim of Ben-Hadad. Ben-Hadad is looking for someone that will be careless, that will not be careful to secure wisdom from God. And the person, oh my God, he besieged the city, and the only way out is wisdom. And if you become careless in your handling of this wisdom, you become a victim of the impact of the presence of Ben-Hadad. It might take 5 years for the second leg to come out, but you had already moved, and you didn't know where he was going. So the man pressed further, and he said, okay, oh Lord, you said you will show me the land that you want me to dwell. where you will sustain me. The question is this: is it not the same energy? Are you there? Is it not the same energy that God used in verse 3 to tell him the land? It's the same energy that God used to tell him, I will show you the land. Why did God not just avoid verse 2 and then go straight to the direction in verse 3? God knows you and me. And God will only show up when you seek him with all of your heart. The fullness of that which you seek will never be made available until he has judged that your seeking was done with all of your heart. That means I have no other defense, I have no other salvation, I have no other support. You are my only support. When he knows that you are at that point, then he gives you what you will need for the journey. So in verse 3, he shows up again and says, sojourn in this land. At the end of the day, the golden land that God was talking about was actually the land where he was dwelling. Why did he? That's how God is. He wants to know if you will wait for him. He wants to know whether you have another alternative. He will waste your time for a period. And if it is true that you have another plan B, you will jump at it and leave him alone. It's only those people that don't have any other plan that will see the glory of God. Listen to me. God is not a man. If you go to the economics class in Benue State University, they will give you numerous assortments of solutions to the economic meltdown. The lecturers know it, even though they are not working in it. But at least they know it. They will be saying something. The thing they are saying, they are not experiencing it, but they will be saying it. God doesn't give you an intellectual answer. He doesn't give you an answer that seems to suggest that, that is one high intellectual strategy. God will give you an answer that if you are not sure it is him, you will despise the answer. Because the answer doesn't seem to have the ability to address the issue for which it came.